Jill sighed as she looked at the pregnancy test in her hand. She didn't want to believe it. This was the third test she'd taken. She stared at all 3 pregnancy tests, and they all told her the same thing. Pregnant, pregnant, pregnant. She sat on the edge of the bathtub. This was all so sudden for her. She glanced over at the door. The father of the unborn child was on the other side sleeping. Jill put a gentle hand on her stomach. It's going to be okay, she told herself, both and her unborn baby. She went back to their bed. Chris was snoring slightly. Jill snuggled up next to him and began to think of how she was going to break the news to him. About 3 weeks ago, Jill began feeling sick, but she had just assumed it was Chris's horrible cooking. When she had missed her time of the month, she began to worry. She lay next to him in silence, thinking of the best way to had informed Chris of the news. The two had been a couple since Chris had rescued her from Wesker while in Africa. She remained in deep thought for a while now, until she felt Chris's arm wrapped around her. Are you okay? He asked her, yawning as he pulled her body closer to him. You have a strange look on your face. Yeah, I'm fine, she said, kissing him on the forehead. You sure? He asked, raising an eyebrow at her. She was about to reply when the morning sickness decided to interrupt their conversation. She ran to the bathroom and Chris sat up and followed after her. Jill, he asked, rubbing her back as she washed out her mouth in the sink. What's wrong? She looked at him from the reflection of the mirror. She sighed and turned to look at the non-reflective Chris. I'm pregnant. He stared at her eyed wide for a moment. Pregnant? She nodded. Chris, you don't have to do anything. You don't want to do... Pregnant? He asked again. His voice was softer, sounding somewhat scared. Yes, she looked at him. She placed his hand on her stomach gently. But we've used protection every single time. Are you sure? She pointed to the 3 pregnancy tests, which she had forgotten to dispose of. Chris stared at them for a long time, then gently pulled her into a hug. I'm going to be a father? He whispered into her ear softly. Yeah, she whispered back, crying tears of joy. 7 months later, Chris and Jill had just started to set up the nursery. Jill was sitting in a rocking chair as she read up the crib setup instructions to Chris. You know Claire will have a heart attack, he said, pushing the now-finished crib into a spot up against the wall where Jill had wanted it. Yeah, well, we could have told her sooner, she replied, standing up to inspect the work Chris had done. Well, I didn't think an email saying, oh yeah, Jill and I are having a baby. So how have you been? Would work for her. She nodded. Yeah, that's true. Claire was visiting for the week, giving her plenty of time to adjust to the baby Redfield's arrival. Well, she should be here any second, he said, gathering up the empty boxes that had the unfinished crib was in. The couple had went to the living room, which was filled with various baby clothing, furniture, and toys. With only 2 months left, the Valentine Redfield house was in a state of chaos, mainly due to the months of procrastination. Claire had let herself in. Hey, anyone home? She called out playfully. Hey, Claire, Jill yelled back, folding up the baby blankets. Chris had pulled Claire into the kitchen before she could get a good look at Jill. Claire, there's something we need to tell you, Chris said, in his big brother tone of voice. What is it? She asked, then narrowing her eyes at him. What did you do? Chris glared at his little sister. Jill and I are having a baby. What? She said, pulling Chris to hug. I'm so excited, I'm gonna be an aunt! Pulling away from her brother. How many weeks? Oh, it's probably gonna be a while before it's born. It isn't it. We've been calling him or her baby Redfield, Jill said, walking over and giving her a hug. It's been a while, Claire, she said, smiling at her. Claire stared back at Jill in shock. She had suspected Jill to only be a few weeks, or a month at least. Whoa, Jill, you're huge, she joked, staring at her belly. Gee, thanks, Jill said, going to walk back to the living room, and Chris glares at his sister. Come on, Jill, I was only joking. Following her. So is it a boy or a girl? Well, we couldn't tell. The doctor says that the baby's in a position where they can't tell yet, Chris said, sitting next to his girlfriend on the couch. Well, the couple exchanged glances. If I'm having a girl, we have decided her name will be Heather, Jill told Chris as he placed a hand on her stomach. Aw, Heather Redfield, Claire exclaimed. And if it's a boy? David James, Jill told her. Aw. 2 months later, Jill woke up with a depressed sigh. It had been 2 days since her past due date, and the anticipation was horrible. Chris was already up watching TV in the living room. "You could have just woken me up, you know," Jill told him as she slowly walked in, having Chris help her sit down on the couch. You need your rest. The baby should be here any day now." "And what if it's not?" she asked him, letting her imagination get the best of her. "Then I assume they'll force the labor. Jilly, there's nothing to be worrying about," he reassured her, kissing her. "Yeah?" She went to the kitchen to make breakfast, and Chris followed up to help her. Chris?" Jill said, as he was cleaning the breakfast dishes. "Yeah?" Still focused on the spot of a dish. "It's time!" she exclaimed. "What?" Turning around, then noticing that Jill was suffering contractions. Oh God, okay." Having a mild panic attack as he helped Jill into the car and drove off to the hospital. 14 hours later, Jill had finally gave birth to the Redfield baby. By the time Claire was at the hospital, in the waiting room, Chris walks out with a big smile on his face. "Well, what is it?" Claire said, jumping up. "How did it go?" "Do you want to go see them?" he asked. Jill was holding a white blanket close to her chest, humming a lullaby to her newborn baby. Chris sat on the edge of her bed, kissing Jill as he looked at his child. "Well, what is it, a boy or a girl?" Claire asked, getting more impatient by the second. "Say hello to Aunt Claire, Heather Marie Redfield," Jill said, smiling at the full-grown woman shrieked at this like a schoolgirl. "Ah, Heather Marie, may I hold her?" Jill carefully passed the newborn to Claire. Chris pulled Jill into a kiss. "She's beautiful, just like her mother," Chris said, kissing her again. Jill looked at her as Claire was slowly rocking Heather. "Yeah," she said, exhausted from delivering her daughter. Claire carefully set the newborn into Chris's arms. "Welcome to the world, Heather Marie," Jill smiled as she drifted off to sleep. And that, my pretties, was Welcome to the World, Baby Redfield, a Resident Evil fan fiction written by MissWeskah. Now, my final thoughts on the story? I personally have to say this one was a really cute story involving, Jill and Chris having a child of their own. I mean, I've been a diehard Chris and Jill shipping, person, but I do respect people's opinions on it. I know some people say it's overrated and that, but, I will respect people's opinions on that. But just don't be toxic and don't shove it down my throat. That's all I ask. I know I repeat myself multiple times, but still. Obviously, this was a really good story. I mean, it's pretty much takes place after Resident Evil 5, which I personally think, it's a really good follow-up to that. I personally really enjoyed this story a whole lot. It was really good. The grammar was really well done, and the sentence structure was good. Paragraph structure was awesome, and yeah, I personally really enjoyed this story a lot. This one was actually quite cute, and I personally really enjoyed this a whole lot. So, I haven't done a Resident Evil story in a long time, so that's kind of why I decided, I'll narrate a Resident Evil story because, why not? But I personally really enjoyed this story a whole lot. Now, I personally do have to say, this story was made in 2009, and I think I discovered this story back in 2012 or 2013. I can't remember when exactly I actually saw this story, but as soon as I saw it again for the first time in a while, I'm like, now I gotta narrate this story because it's just a really good one. I'll leave a link in the description down below so you guys can go check out this story if you haven't. It's a really good story. I personally really enjoyed it. It's a short but sweet story. I personally really do have to give a shout out to MissWeskah for narrating this. I doubt they're ever going to come across this video, but if they happen to, I want to say that they did a really great job with this story and that it was amazing. I personally really enjoyed this story a whole lot. I thought it was really well done. Definitely a really good story, and I can definitely say, if you're looking into Resident Evil fanfics to read, I recommend you check out this one, because this one is just a really cute story. Anyways, yeah, I personally do have to say, this author wrote a few other Resident Evil stories, so I might consider checking them out when I have the opportunity and the time. Not going to be guaranteeing when that will be, though, because, it's going to depend on when I have the opportunity and the time to sit there and do that. But anyways, this was a pretty good story. I personally really enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. It was amazing. It's definitely a really fun story. I personally really enjoyed this a whole lot. So, and if you guys are probably wondering, was there any flaws or anything with the story wrong that I did not like or had an issue with? No, I don't see anything wrong with the story. I didn't see any issues with the story. I thought it was a really neat story. I personally really enjoyed this. Now, like I'm always going to say, and like I always continue to say, this is simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with it, that's perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these fan fictions. This is just simply my own personal thoughts. I give this one a 10 out of 10. It's a really amazing story, and, you know, Chris and Jill's daughter is actually really cute. I wish there was a continuation of this story, like maybe a sequel to this story where, you know, Jill and Chris's daughter grows up or something. I might consider maybe making a story kind of like that, but not going to guarantee when that will be, though, because, you know, it's due to my life being so busy and, you know, I'm going through a lot of personal issues and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's going to really depend on when I have the opportunity to sit there and do that. But who knows when that will be. But anyways, what did you guys personally think of this story? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what you have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section down below. I'm Shadow the Lion Queen. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. As always, if you guys want to go follow me on Blue Sky, follow me on Twitter, follow me on DeviantArt, and follow me on my backup channel known as MissWeskah, as links to those will be in the About page section, so you guys can go follow me on there if you want. And that's pretty much all I have to really say, but if I'm missing something, please let me know. And as always, roll the outro, because I'm out.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as MissWeskah, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.